Good morning, everyone. A kind of a update on district grants. I think we're a victim of our own success. This past year, 1920, we had a total of 59 approved grants. Of those, there are still 6 that are not closed out. Those grants must be closed out before we will receive the funds for the program this year. Our district grants are starting at $2,000 that we will match from a club, as opposed to district grants, which are also $30,000 in total budget. And the change this year, I'm sure Peter will cover on the global grant side, is that no longer will the Rotary Foundation match cash contributions to a global grant because they don't have enough money because of the success of the global grants program. We're somewhat a victim of that too. In the district grants program, we had funded a total of 59 grants this year, which is amazing for the amount of money that we put into the district, into the annual fund, which comes back after 3 years to use for our district grants. There is a change coming in our district grants. We also require district grants to be in one of the areas of focus, as are the global grants. However, this coming year, for both global grants and district grants, there is a minor change in that they have added an additional area of focus, the environment. So those grants will be available for the 2021-2022 year. However, the Rotary Foundation has not yet released the guidelines that they are going to be using for the environmental grants. That should come out sometime around November, and you will be able to access them. I will load that onto DACDB off of the Rotary Foundation website. But until that time, we can't tell you what the guidelines are. Now, going back to the district grant, it's a very simple thing. We are very successful at doing district grants. There are a couple of things that need to be improved. Number one, when you put in your district grant, you are supposed to also be putting in a itemized list of expenses. If you're doing dictionaries, you should, as an example, you should say how many dictionaries you're doing, at what price point, and how much money you're going to be spending on the dictionaries in your budget. Any item valued at over $100, you should also get price quotes for any single item that exceeds $100 in value, and include that in the application. Remember that a district grant, once approved by the Rotary Foundation, Alan must submit our district grants in what's called the annual spending plan, and we receive the funds in one lump sum from the foundation. Now, we can't receive those funds until the clubs have been certified to receive the funds. We need to have, and do not have yet, a report from our district treasurer as to the amount of district dues that are due, so that we can qualify the clubs, and we have to close out those 6 grants that are still hanging. That's a recap of the district grants, and I think we do a good job with them, and keep on keeping on. Thank you.
Okay, before I introduce Jaime and Peter, I do want to make a comment on that. And again, I don't know if Neil was going to hit this, but you know, there's a few clubs that have not closed out their grants from last year. That is holding up our money because we cannot get our money until every club has closed out their grant. Now, our spending plan has been approved. So if your club is qualified, you paid all your dues and all that, you can start your projects, but you won't get the money until until those grants are closed. And we have a team working on it. Neil's working on it, Elihu's working on it, I'm working on it. But it is frustrating, but we're working on it. Take my word, no one's just letting it go. So I will now pass this on to Jaime Tobin, who is our global grants chair, and Peter Verbeeck, who's our district governor, who loves global grants. So they're going to do it together. So there you go. Go ahead, guys.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So great to see a good turnout today. And first, I want to do a shout out as well to Barbara Goby. Thank you so much. I know there were some last minute changes, but you're a trooper, Barbara, and thank you for that. The success of local grants and global grants, as Elihu mentioned, has been phenomenal, having 59 on the local side. And over the last couple of years, our global grants and the quantity of them has also gone up tremendously. Yes, we've got issues as far as the Rotary Foundation not being able to fund as much as we used to, but we still can get some funding through DDF, district designated funds, that come back to our district. Whatever is given directly by our district to a global grant will be matched by the World Fund. And so that is a very important thing to understand, and why we're doing fundraising at our district. So the amount of turns that we have each year can increase substantially. I'm hoping to more than double those rounds. And this is why I think that we've been very proactive, both for folks that can only offer a little bit of money to the foundation. We're so grateful for those that just give even a smaller amount, or even getting up to Paul Harris. And I want to thank Marusha Gillick to be in front of that whole program and raising those funds as well. And as you've heard, our $1 Million Dinner is already off to a great start. And what this means, folks, is that we're going to have so much more money available for global grants in about 3 years. But funds can also be given directly and immediately to a global grant to qualify for the $1 Million Dinner. And Joe Alshel will get into a little bit more detail on that. So I want to get into the global grant side of it. Jaime will be talking in a little bit of detail about that. But one of the things I wanted to relay here, which is really important, is that number one, your district now has got quite a few people very qualified in helping you to do those. And what I've discovered in doing so many of them, I think I'm up to my 12th or 13th global grant, many of them I've done outside the district, is that even before you get started, and if you can, Barbara, put that first slide in, if you got what I emailed you. No, that's number 4. I think we need to get up to that one. Okay, is that there are 5 main things to be sure that you're working on. And fortunately, dealing with the Bahamas, which is our own district, a lot of these qualifiers we've already met. And so we don't have to worry about that so much. But working outside of our district, there are so many pitfalls that we need to be very careful about. And so number one, when you open a global grant, you are the international club. And the club you're working with overseas is called the host club. And you've got to make sure that that host club, if they have never done a global grant before, or if they have, It's really important that you've got the local Rotarians that are involved in that. As well, when you're doing work, you got to get familiar with the vendors that are involved, making sure there's not conflicts of interest and things of this sort. Who's involved? So you got to really get into the grant to understand this. The beneficiaries, who are the beneficiaries? Are they independent? Are they involved? Are they maybe some that are directly Rotarians? In many cases, it may be okay, but other times it's not. You have to be extremely careful on this. This is for microloans. A couple of clubs are doing that. I know Coconut Grove is involved with this, and so am I, is when you're working with NGOs or banks, you have to make sure that banks are meeting their requirements with their governments. You can end up being with a bank that is there just to accept the money, and the whole thing can blow up. And so we can give you details of how to go about doing that. And then qualified cadres, which is not so much something that we're involved at the district level, but I discovered in doing quite a few of those global grants that you can get a cadre from RI that goes there, and they can be led into false impressions of what is going on with a global grant. They have got to know exactly what's going on. And as a international club, I have questioned the cadres and making sure that they meet certain requirements. Next slide, please. So I've mentioned some of these things about choosing the right club, checking conflicts of interest that may be existing within the club, and not examining the processes of choosing their vendors, that they get a couple of bids so that you can make sure that you give it to the right one. And it's not always the cheapest one that you can give it to, but all these questions are to raise in your mind to come back to us to help you with some of these things. And you have to have, and it's very helpful to have a local member of that Rotary Club that's got vocational expertise in that area, or a consultant that's involved that can help you there, because you can trip and make a big boo-boo. Not to document remedies in case of non-performance of the vendors. So in other words, when you build something, you got to make sure that you've got steps of how you start to pay these vendors for performance and quality performance that got to be involved. And then failures of banks, if you're involved with the microloans, to collect those things on a regular basis, to have ledgers, etc. Next. So we talked about the vendors, and I'm not gonna, yeah, that's right. No, back one. There. So forward one more with that lady in front of that tank. Important to work with the local government to get their buy-in as well. A lot of global grants end up saying, okay, we're just going to deal directly with the clubs, but the clubs as well need to work with the local authorities to make sure that you follow local and national laws. And so that's another important factor. One more slide forward. So on the microloan side, we're also talking about people having skin in the game, and not just give things away, but we want to have the beneficiaries, if they don't have the money, to put some labor in. And there's all kinds of other methodologies for the recipients to have that, so that we have sustainability. They'll have the motivation to go ahead and do what they need to do to have a successful growth by having skin in the game. And then maintaining a community account, not just for microloans, but if you do water, sanitation and all that. And we demand on our side of it that women are involved and that they are on the committee, and then there's a written document prior to getting involved so that all have a voice at that club and at the beneficiary level, that they do this in a correct way. So many times there's so much exclusion going on, and that needs to be watched. training people that are in the club, the host club as well, to make sure that they know what they're doing. If they've done a global grant before, they'll have familiarity, but it's not to say you can't work with a club for the first time, but you've got to make sure that they understand their responsibilities. Next. And so we were talking about the bank references. Let's skip this as well to make sure that they're qualified when they're involved. Next slide, Barbara, if you can get to that one. And so we've talked about the cadre as well, and the beneficiaries need to have and to be checked by the host club as well. You can't just say, okay, bank on a microloan side of it, or if there's other involvement by the beneficiaries when we talk about skin in the game, that these things are controlled. Okay, next. So I think I tried to explain to you that from the very beginning as the international club, when you do the grant, that all these things are laid out. You've got a right host club that is involved, the vendors, the beneficiaries, banks, if you're an NGOs, if you're involved. So this is a quick little introduction of what you do before you even get started. And now I'd like to turn over to Jaime, and Jamie's got tremendous experience as well with her global grant side of it, especially when she was in New Mexico and working with Mexico on global grants. So you can call on her. There's other people in the district that do. You can call on me. And over to you, Jaime.
Hi. Okay, so my first slide just basically goes over everything that Elihu pretty much talked about, was just the success that we're having and kind of, how we are, I don't know, I guess indebted to ourselves, but we are doing a really good job. And here's where, most of your or all of your money is going towards, so you can actually see a lot of our literacy projects, sanitation, and of course, disease prevention is always going to be number one. But you can go ahead and go to the next slide. And then Peter talked a lot about the next slide, which is a lot of times the, I think it's back one. Yeah, there we go. I get a lot of questions about host sponsor versus international sponsor, MOUs. I get a lot of questions as far as those are concerned, how clubs do qualify, whether or not somebody's actually went to a grant to go ahead and move forward with a grant, whether it be district or global, but I do mainly the global side. But for the host sponsor, that's the person that's doing the project assessment. You have to make sure that the community has buy-in, and everybody does. I find that when people are doing an international project, they think, oh, maybe they have a literacy problem or they can't read or something like that, and then come to find out after the community assessment's done, maybe it's not literacy at all that they're wanting to do. Perhaps it's a water project, or perhaps it's something else that's really what the community needs. So having that community assessment is one of the most important things that you can have once you've gotten all of your qualifications and everything is all paper-wise in order. You're going to want to make sure what you're doing is what they need done. So that's another thing I get a lot of, is people asking about the community assessment and and sustainability. That's another big one too. Making sure, like what Peter says, then you can educate those people, and if something breaks down and the part is, down the street versus having to order it from overseas, even if it's a little cheaper, it does get the community buy-in, because you have, somebody there local that's actually able to, educate the people on how to, continue to use the product even after it's been the project's been completed, for instance. On our side, as far as the National Club. I'm trying to think of some questions I get there, but mostly it's about, I would say, the MOU and the paperwork part. The bank part, people pretty much get that down. It is overwhelming, but initially I would say just print out or go through the entire application. And then once you see what it is you need, that's probably the best way to tackle it, because a lot, probably, I don't know, 70% of it is going to be, just, sign and draw, like, you have everything that you need there. It's going to be a very small amount of things that you're going to have to actually need assistance, with. But for that, you can always ask me. I'm always available. I have an email, phone, WhatsApp. You guys can always, call me anytime, and I'll definitely be there. So just know that I do have a lot of experience with, we have a very similar situation in New Mexico. I was part of the Las Cruces Rio Grande Club. So we had El Paso was our district, and we did very similar global grants with Mexico, because we had the northern part of Mexico's clubs were in our district. So we had a, bi-district conference, once a year, and we could marry the projects with the money. So it was real easy for the grants to take place. But I would say for the grants that are denied, I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's in the lower right-hand corner. Oftentimes people do have problems with these 4 things for some reason. They have an issue narrowing it down to the area of focus. Sometimes they want to put 2 or 3 areas of focus, and that just kind of muddies the water. You kind of want to narrow it down as much as you can. So definitely try and do that. It always fits into some area of focus. So don't ever get too worried about that. It will happen. So you'll be fine with that. Just know that there's going to be an area of focus. And then if it's not sustainable, that's another thing that sometimes gets in people's way, and they stumble over that because you can't just leave a project there and it's not going to take care of itself. You have to make sure that there's somebody there that can change the wheels on the bus, or, figure something out if something breaks or goes wrong, or, and who's going to train these people to, continue to make sure that this is a viable, sustainable project. And then the project benefits, another organization's programs. A lot of times that you can, well, not a lot of times, sometimes you can, piggyback off of another organization, but you don't want to do something that the YMCA is doing or something that somebody else is involved with already, because you don't want to replicate things. So try not to do something that somebody else, I guess, has already done, because if it's already been working, then you don't want to reinvent the wheel, I guess you could say. But the community assessment, like I was saying before, is so important, because that's where your project is going. If you have no community assessment and you just throw a project in there and they don't want it, they don't need it, they don't like it, they're not going to have that emotional, spiritual buy-in where they're, just as attached to it as you are. So you can't just throw money at things and think that that's, going to be it and it's going to go away, a problem's going to go away, or something. They're going to be happy about something. They have to want it just as much as you do in order for, everything to kind of seamlessly work. But yeah, with that being said, you guys are more than welcome to, I'll put my email in the chat. How about that? Because I'm getting messages, but I'll put my email in the chat and my phone number. You guys can always reach out. Anything before the paperwork, during the application process, asking questions about sustainability, community assessment, all that kind of stuff. I would love to hear your ideas and would definitely like to help out in any way that I can. So that you have me there with Peter.
Okay, terrific.
All right.
Next.
Is that it? I'm going to make a couple comments and I'm going to move on to the next person. One of the main reasons people stay Rotarians, talking about membership now, is fellowship. And fellowship has gotten very difficult during the COVID era. We can't see each other. We can't hug each other. We can't do these things we used to do. So one of the other major reasons people stay in Rotary is the work that they're doing, the projects that they're doing. They feel good about how they're helping their local or their international communities. So I think it falls more on the grant area to make up, to give the people the good feeling that they need to get to stay Rotarians, because we can't do as much fellowship as we used to do. So I think grants are really important. The other thing I want to make a comment on is, and we finally have figured this out now, we're working on some grants in our district, is I've been pushing for years. We have one advantage that no other district in the state of Florida can do but us. And that is, we are the only international district in the state of Florida. We have 2 countries in our district, okay? And because of that, we can do a global grant in our district. We can have, if there's a, God forbid, we had one, a Hurricane Dorian in Grand Bahama Island. We can have a host club in Grand Bahama Island. We can have an international club here. God forbid there's a hurricane that hits the South Florida. We could be a host club. A club in Grand Bahama Island could be the international club. So this is something that we can do that no other district in Florida can do. And we need to do it more. I know we're starting to do it now, which is great. The last thing I want to do is something that Elihu touched on. The funding has changed slightly, but don't be scared. It's not that big a deal. You know, I'll give you an example. 3 clubs decide to put in $3,000 towards a global grant. 3,000, 3,000, 3,000, okay? Guess what? Because they put in 9,000, 3 clubs in our district is gonna match that 9,000. We match dollar for dollar up to 10,000. So guess what? That's 18,000. Now, the Rotary Foundation will match what the district puts in dollar for dollar. So we put in 9, they put in 9. That's 27. Now, in the old days, they used to match what the clubs put in 50 cents on the dollar. The clubs put in 9,000, that's another 4,500. That would have taken you to 31.5, which would have made your $30,000 grant. That doesn't work anymore because they're not putting in that 4,500. So here's my change. Instead of doing 3,000, they're now putting in 3,333 and 33 cents. One club puts in 34 cents, okay? So now the clubs all put in 10,000. Now the district puts in 10,000 because we match dollar for dollar, and they match what the district puts in dollar for dollar, 30,000. So the only difference is that you got to get a little bit more to get to that 30,000 because they don't match the club's 50 cents on the dollar anymore. But that's the only significant change, but we can work around it. All right,